Anybody? Okay, great. Then I'll be able to see if you want to be recognized. For anybody joining us who is not a member of the commission, of course, this is a public meeting. So if you would like to make a public comment at the end of our meeting, it will take place at approximately 8:50. And at that time, I will ask members of the public who wish to be recognized to unmute and state their name. Speakers will have up to 3 minutes to comment, and the moderator will time you and give you a verbal warning when 30 seconds remains. Lastly, I just want to remind everybody this is a public forum. All information associated with today's meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to Freedom of Information Act requirements. And with that, let's go ahead and start the meeting. And on our agenda, well, June, thank you for putting that up, and thank you for now taking it down. Greg, you have your hand up. I was just about to actually recognize our special guests. So I will call on you in just a second. I just wanted to say hi and welcome to David Pretty. David is our one of the newest school board members and is the liaison to the Jfac tonight. Well, actually for this year. Hopefully he'll want to stay after this meeting. David, I didn't know if you would like to put yourself on camera and say anything to the group.
I just want to say thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here. This is one of the committees that I lobbied for to be on. So I'm happy to join in the work with you and as we move forward. Thanks for having me, Kathleen.
Thanks so much for being here. Let's see. And I would also like to recognize a few people who are with us tonight who've been with us actually for the last 4 years, at least 5 years, maybe. But will be with us no longer because their terms have expired, and they have they've decided not to re-up. One of those is Greg Greeley, our intrepid chair through last month. So Greg, I just wanted to first of all recognize you if you'd put yourself on camera. And on behalf of the commission, I wanted to thank you for all of your work. You were one of the founding members of the commission. You were appointed as the vice chair to Ginger being chair, and you have served this commission so well. I mean, we really will miss your leadership on the commission, and I will certainly miss serving with you. I didn't know if you had anything you wanted to say.
Well, not a lot more, but I would repeat, like I put in my letter and shared with everyone here, we got a lot done in the first 4 years, and I was super proud of what we were able to accomplish. It's great to see David here. Great to see you, Kathleen, in the leadership role. So I'm very much looking forward to what you guys are going to be able to do, in spite of all of our challenges with the COVID and the resources and so forth. So at our last meeting, I was really heartened to hear the enthusiasm that commission members still had to move forward and leverage the pandemic that we're facing and rethink ways that we could work on public facilities. So I hope all the best for you all. I am going to disappear for a while because I've actually started a new position at work. So I've been detailed out to fiscal service, where we are rapidly preparing for the stimulus round 3. And that is consuming a huge amount of time. Hopefully we'll get the checks and the direct deposit out very, very quickly. But again, it's great to see all of your faces again, and really wish you the best of luck on the year going forward.
Thank you, Greg. Well, I'm standing on your shoulders here, so thank you so much for your leadership in the past. First 2 years, I think, as vice chair, and then another 2.5 to 3 maybe as chair. So thank you very much. I saw, Matt, you had your hand up. Was that on purpose?
That was an errant hand.
Okay.
But
right.
Thank you for your eagle eyes there.
All right. So also with us tonight is Sue Robinson. And so those of you who've been on the Jfac, especially those of you who've been on since the very beginning, which many of you have, Sue is one of those people who was one of the first appointees, I believe. So Sue, I just wanted to say, I know I'll probably continue to see you after the pandemic since you live right up the street from me. But I really want to thank you for, all of the work, all of the effort and energy you've given to this commission. I know that you brought substantial experience with both, the county and of course APS, having served for so many years in APS. And so we will definitely miss you on this commission. I didn't know if you wanted to say anything, even just goodbye to those to your commissioners.
Sure, I would like to say goodbye, and I will miss you all. And it has been a real honor to have served on it, and especially to have been involved in the beginnings of the whole idea. I have worked very hard over many years for joint facilities and cooperation between the schools and the county, which I think is always a possibility and has had its ups and downs. And I would just hope that you would continue to not only look to the future, but look to the past to see what has occurred and to use that as kind of the shoulders to stand on as well. And I also want to just thank Greg for all that he has contributed and over this time. So thanks, and I'll miss you all.
Thanks so much, Sue. We also are saying goodbye to two other members of the commission who I don't believe are with us. I'm searching to make sure that's the case. I don't see Cecily and I don't see Katie. But they have also, I think both of them have also served. Maybe Matt, you can correct me if I'm wrong, or Greg, or Sue, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think both have actually served since the beginning as well, since the commission was founded in 2016. So Greg, is that true?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, so we will also miss them. They have given a lot, especially, in the first couple of years of this commission, you all held a lot of public meetings and gathered a lot of information, specifically around the Buck site and the Carlin Springs site, and advise the county on whether or not to do the swap, and so you really did a lot of work and a lot of public outreach. It was actually a very good process. So again, we will miss Cecily and Katie as well. So thank you all so much, and I will not make you sit through another meeting. So you are certainly free to go, but we definitely hope we run into you at future meetings, or just, when we're all done with the pandemic, we'll hope to see you soon. So thank you in person. All right, so with that, I would like to go ahead and start our regular meeting. And I'm looking for the agenda. That's what I'm doing. And actually, I don't know, June, are you able to put up the agenda for a minute? Do you have that handy? If you don't, that's fine.
So Kathleen, I'm next. So I'll do a quick introduction to policy M15 regarding aquatics. But what I'll do as well is on the chat, I put a board docs link to the document in question. But let me project right now, and I'll show the members on how they can find this document. So if you go to our APS website, and you go to Engage, and you go to Current Initiatives, scroll down to School Board Policies, and go to Policies for Revisions and Amendments. And scroll down, there's a lot of content here regarding some, recent policies. But if you scroll toward the bottom, you'll see public comments on drafts. The reason I'm showing this to you right now is I know at one of the prior meetings, we had a link that I shared that was already not current. But if you want to always have the most current link on a policy that's being considered, go to the Engage website, and there you will find the most current link regarding that policy. So policy number M15, Aquatics Facilities and Programs, is open for public comment from the 15th of this month to the 15th of next month. And, as we've discussed previously with other policies that are up for review, if once you review it and look at it, with the policies you have documentation, including strike through so that you see what some of the changes are that are being proposed. If you have feedback on one of these policies, please email Kathleen and Stacy Snyder and CC me. If they decide to forward a formal memorandum to the policy team and the policy review group, they'll do that. And as well as, we'll provide the online form of the policy, which is the way that, it's officially tracked and registered with APS. So again, the policy is up to review up to the 15th of next month.
Thanks so much, Robert. So the way we've done this in the past, APS has a lot of policies and they review them on a rotating basis. And so I think you'll remember that in December, I think we had facilities, it was a leasing and property policy. That's not the exact name, but and we actually weighed in as a whole Jfac, so we actually did talk about it, take back comments, and submitted through the form actually an official response from Jfac. I would encourage you, as Robert said, go ahead and send me and Stacy any comments you have. However, I would encourage you to go ahead and also put your feedback in the form itself. Depending on the comments we get, and I have to confess, I have not yet looked at this policy to review it. And depending on the comments we get, I think we'll determine whether or not an official Jfac comment will go out. I just want to make sure that any comments you have are recognized immediately and can inform the policy. But I can gather them all, toward the end of the time period. And create, an official response from Jfac as well. But I would encourage you to go ahead and also put your comments into that feedback form. The next item on our agenda, actually, I should ask, does anybody have any questions about that? The public forum only allows responses that are less than 250 characters, Claire tells me. I didn't even hit that last time when we made that, but thank you, when we made the last comment, but thank you for letting us know. Okay, the next item we have up, we have Jonathan Teresi from, he's the Director of Strategic Planning and Evaluation. And he is giving us an update on the Instructional Programs and Pathways, otherwise known as the IPP. Jonathan, go ahead and take it away.
Great, thanks, Kathleen. I'm going to project here and just pull up the presentation and then we'll get started. Let me go to view, show here. Okay, so I wanted to take a minute and provide an update on some of the work. It does say December. We've been kind of getting around to the advisories between last month and this month, and wanted to just provide a status update and future work ahead and opportunities for this committee, as well as others, to how there will be opportunities for input as we move forward in this process. So tonight, just wanted to take 10 minutes to talk about what is the IPP, why it's important, some of our goals, new features of the visioning process, and our instructional programs, and then our engagement and timeline for the work. So what is the IPP? It's a framework that does the following. It's going to define the role of our neighborhood schools, our option schools, and all instructional programs. It's going to provide a comprehensive list and a description of current instructional programs and options in a centralized location. Currently, if you want to learn about the range of what APS offers, you have to go to about 15 to 20 different links. So we're going to centralize this all in one location and help that be a resource for our staff and for our families to learn about the range of programs that we offer in APS, pre-K to adult. We also, most importantly, provide a clear vision for the future that aligns with our mission, vision, strategic plan, and new equity policy. This could include recommendations to expand some of our current programs, change or modify existing programs, create new programs, move programs to new sites, consolidate programs, or eliminate programs. So as you can see here, Jfac, will be an important resource for this work and sharing advice and guidance as we come forward with some instructional visioning for these areas. Identify criteria for assessing our instructional programs. That includes our existing programs as well as new programs that might be proposed for creation. Why it's important, this is going to serve for a framework for our decision-making process around instructional visioning. We have a lot of planning and processes, the annual budget, our capital improvement plan, boundary processes, and the ASAP. We really want to have instruction out in front, helping guide and inform those processes so that we're making, we've been saying a lot, instruction before construction. And that is really one of our key goals here, is to get that instructional vision out in front. One of the goals of our strategic plan is to provide multiple pathways to student success. The IPP will define current options we have for our students, as well as our vision for the future to help achieve that goal. The IPP will align with our new equity policy and reflect our commitment to ensuring equity and access while providing educational excellence for all students, whether you attend a neighborhood school or access one of our programs or options. So again, our goals: ensure equity and access in all programs, ensure that we have multiple pathways to student success, promote demographic diversity, and assisting with managing enrollment at school levels as we look at program locations. Some of you may have been following this process when it starts back in 2018-19. This is a dynamic and fluid process. The visioning work will be ongoing. We will look to provide updates annually as we continue to develop and implement the vision, evaluate our programs, and make any refinements that we think are necessary. We did change the name to Programs and Pathways. Not all of our programs have a K-12 pathway. For example, the Langston program at the secondary level, that just because there's not a K-12 pathway, that doesn't make them any less important or any less effective. It just shows the ways in which we're meeting the needs of the range of our learners in Arlington. So we changed the title a bit. We also expanded it to pre-K to adult. Before the IPP was K-12, so now we're really spanning the distance because that is what we offer in Arlington, pre-K to adult programs. We describe the relationship between the three processes, the IPP, the CIP, and the ASAP. Articulate, we're working on developing program criteria that we will use. Some of our current programs are assessed as part of existing evaluations, but we will also need to evaluate some that are not. And also, we conducted a program audit to identify enrollment trends and demographic composition and identify areas of under and over-representation of certain student groups. So that will be shared as well in the coming weeks. So here's just a snapshot of our current programs that we offer. I know there's a lot of information there, but it just shows across the level in the general education setting. Our English learner programs, they exist at all schools, levels 1 to 6. So I know it seems like we don't have many, but they exist at all schools for all levels. So rather than itemizing, we just add that one bullet there. Special ed programs, you can see here listed. And again, this is just an inventory of what we currently offer. This is not an articulation of our vision for the future. It's just a snapshot of what we offer. We have a lot of evaluations that, for example, the special ed program and our 504. And so we'll be talking very much, a part of our vision is to help promote inclusion and promote some of those goals that were espoused in those processes. So stakeholder engagement, we had visioning sessions with our leaders this fall and this month. We will be walking out more with the committees and families in the month of February. and using multiple channels to help get out our message and provide opportunities for input in multiple languages as well. We have some community meetings planned and open office hours. We will be sharing those dates soon, next week, with the community. So the development cycle for this year, again, we had visioning sessions on the left-hand graphic right now, left-hand side, work sessions with the school board in October, and now we're at a point here in January where we are beginning to walk out to the community for February, and then we will have recommendations to the school board in March after the community has a chance to weigh in on some of the visioning work that was done. Moving forward, we realized as we worked more closely with John Chadwick in his office and Leslie Peterson in finance, we needed to adjust this cycle for future years. So moving forward, we will look to get our vision out in front of the community by the end of October, have engagement in November with final recommendations in January. And what that will allow us is to get this instructional vision earlier in the budget process, as well as the CIP development process. So moving forward, that is the vision for the work. And again, this is the last slide, but our timeline. We will be meeting with leaders in February, having community engagement in a variety of ways. We have a monitoring report to the school board next week, and then coming back in March for an action item following that community engagement. So we will be emailing the chairs once the monitoring report is public next week. We will look to come back if possible. In the future, there'll be a variety of ways for this committee to provide input, and I'm welcome. I'm willing to come back and engage with the group once those specific, ideas and recommendations are ready for sharing with that. So that concludes the update. I do have time for questions if there's time in the agenda, but.
Thank you very much, Mr. Teresi. I'm sorry, that's a holdover from Wakefield, isn't it?
Yes, that's okay.
Claire, you have a question.
Claire?
Yeah, hi, thanks for giving an update. Because we're so focused on facilities with this commission, I'm trying to see if there's any type of preview that you can give. I know that you can't disclose a decision, but could you at least provide a few factors or items or something that are under consideration with respect to facilities and how that interacts with the IPP? For example, I think, as you alluded to, there's going to be some focus on integrating special education into classrooms. Does that mean that there's going to be less busing of special education students, which would impact transportation, which would impact the need for bus facilities? So could you tie it a little bit more to some of the things that we work on here?
Yes, yeah. I have to be careful because I can't get too specific. Next week, once this report is public, I can share all the details and go through it more. But there will, as part of the visioning, there will be recommendations, for program expansion that could require, necessitate, some siting work, based on their current site. There's also recommendations to utilize some of our existing spaces in a different way to align with the vision. So I can't mention any specifics now because that hasn't been made public, and the board will be receiving this report soon. But in about a week and a half, I can, come back or just give or share an update with Kathleen, and she can push the report out to the group. I think when you see the report, you'll see very clearly there's multiple kind of entry points for this committee to kind of weigh in and help provide some input into some of the visioning that will be shared. And I think on an ongoing basis that's part of some of the demands and needs we have in the county, with space being at such a premium, of how to utilize our space most efficiently, our transportation network. All of those things are real realities that have to kind of feed into this visioning work in terms of being pragmatic and feasible. So I know I couldn't answer your question as specifically as right now, but I do think that in the future that it'll be helpful when you see the report, and I'm happy to come back.
Thanks. I'll look at it in a week and a half.
Yes, sorry, thanks.
Wonderful, thank you. So you're presenting at a school board meeting in 2 weeks, is that?
Yeah, February 4th, next Thursday. Yep.
Oh, okay. All right, so if we can't wait, we could also watch the school board meeting, I guess.
Yes, and I'll be sure to get that presentation. It's going to be posted on the Engage page, so and it'll be publicly accessible.
Okay, great. I see Ted has a question.
Yes, so this is kind of a follow-up to Claire's question, and you kind of emphasized in the presentation the IPP being dynamic and fluid. How much change do you, not just you, but you as the leadership team, expect to happen, especially annually? And I'm thinking in terms of, if something is too, doesn't give you a base to do much if it's changing a lot. You expect major changes or just like tweaks along the margins, or do you have any expectation along those lines that we could look forward to and helping us to look, out into the future?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think it's going to vary from year to year. So part of what we're looking to do here is incorporate our evaluation. So I can give you one good example. So the World Language Program evaluation is going to be presented to the school board in February. That's going to give us a mountain of data to do a visioning process for the dual language immersion program. And so our next IPP cycle that will start in April when we start our visioning, we're going to be looking at the dual language immersion program, and we'll have some recommendations to share in the fall about the dual language immersion program. So but the key piece there is that program evaluation is helping feed the data and provide the information we need to do that work. So as we go year to year, different programs will be evaluated and provide us with data to do some visioning work on that. So it really will just depend on the data we have available, the needs of the division, our kind of goals. So some years there could be kind of some larger, bigger ideas, and other years there might be some more fine tuning with recommending some minor changes. So it's really just looking at our program evaluation cycle and what data we'll have available to us to really engage in a rigorous visioning process. But I do see your point. But we will have some items that will be within this group's purview, and as we look into the future and of our needs.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much for being with us tonight, for providing us with this glimpse into what I know was, first of all, a lot of work went into it. I know years of work. So we're looking forward to seeing the final report. I served on the Superintendent's Master Planning Committee way back when, and I know we did a lot of thinking about aligning some of the programs across all levels. And so I'm sure that your work probably referenced a lot of that and a lot of other input that's happened in the last, 6 years or so since that report came out.
I just want to add one final point. So this report next week is the monitoring report. This is some of the visioning work that comes from leaders. The input we get from the community is very important during the month of February, as well as from the school board. And so the plan is to come back at the end of March with actual recommendations. So what we're sharing next week is kind of the idea is the culmination of these visioning sessions, but with the caveat that the community input and the board input is crucial to helping kind of shape and will allow us to make any refinements that might be needed and changes that will result in the final recommendations in late March. So I want everyone to wanted to make that point. But thank you again for the time and having me tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you for being here. And to the Jfac commission members, once we find out, what the actual recommendations are, the ideas are in this report, we may determine if there's a lot of facility type changes, if they're talking about, you know, moving programs from building to building, then you know, we might want to weigh in, or we may not. So I think a lot of that will depend on the outcome of the report and what's said. But we can talk about that at our next meeting. All right, so I wanted to move on to our school board direction for the fiscal year 2022 capital improvement program, or plan, sorry. And tonight we have John Chadwick with us to do that presentation. I do want to say, John, I heard a rumor. Actually, I guess it's more than a rumor. It's was said at the last, I think, school board meeting I heard. And I understand that you're actually retiring in March. So congratulations are in order, I think. And thanks for all your years of very hard work and on behalf of APS.
Thank you, Kathleen. It is all true. I retire at the end of February, so I won't be here to torment you anymore. So I'm going to ask, there's a presentation that was made to the school board on last Thursday. And
I can project that, John.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you'd bring that up, and then I'll just go through it. And then between Robert and I, we'll be able to answer any questions. How long do I have, Kathleen?
Probably with, you know, question, I think you're scheduled for about 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay.
And then we can take questions.
Okay, well, let me try and do it. And Robert, I'll ask you to just drop down a page when I need to, so you can do that now. So this was presented to the school board last Thursday for action, and they took action on it and adopted it. And it followed an information on it about 2 weeks before. So the school board directs superintendent on projects to be included in the superintendent's proposed CIP. And we use the school board direction to gather costs and evaluate priorities among the projects that have been identified. So we, as you know, the school board adopted a 4 to 6 year CIP. Actually, it was a bit less than that in June of this year, with project cost timeframes and the effect of the proposed CIP costs on future CIP budgets. And then this year, in May and June, the school board will discuss and refine the projects before voting on the school board CIP on June 25th. Next slide, please. So, as you know, last June, we and the county moved away from doing a 10-year CIP that we would normally do to doing a short, very short one, a 1 or 2 years. But this year, the school is considering, although there is a lot of discussion about whether it actually will adopt a CIP for this year, or wait until next year when we would be back on the regular cycle. And hopefully that would either be 4 to 6 years, or it would be the full 10 years if we can see far enough ahead. And this would be plans to address APS seat needs due to ongoing student enrollment growth, facility enhancements at the Career Center, completion of the Heights building site, and needed upgrades for air quality, for security, for kitchens, and for fields. And so recognizing, of course, that the needs might outweigh the anticipated funding available, the school board does direct the school board to develop a 4 to 6 year CIP that aligns with the APS equity policy, and it will be acted on by the school board in June. And the projects are laid out on the next page. So let's go about them. So additional secondary seats as soon as possible, but no later than fall of 2024. As you know, that's quite a tall order, and I think that we will be quite challenged to be able to deliver additional secondary seats by that time. But there are ways in which we might be able to do that, and there will be more discussion about that. So there are needed upgrades to facilities. So by May of this year, the superintendent will propose a CIP with plans to upgrade these items here. So kitchens, according to a kitchen upgrade plan, which we are basically looking at a number of schools that need major kitchen upgrades. We are doing 3 this summer for the 3 schools that are moving. That's ATS, the old ATS, the old Key, and then the other one is, of course, McKinley, which was not upgraded very much in the recent renovation and does need a full renovation. If some of you will remember that some time ago in the past, APS had a central kitchen, and our kitchens were pretty much serving kitchens or catering kitchens. And so slowly we've upgraded them. We did a fairly makeshift job initially, and now we're going through the process of upgrading them all. And we certainly found that the need for them to be more and more efficient is really there. And we've seen that with the amount of food that we've been able to distribute during the pandemic. The main entry vestibules to meet current standard. I'm sure those of you who've been in the newer schools and some that have been renovated know that the standard practice is to enter, for visitors during the school day, to enter the entrance vestibule, but not be able to go straight into the school. They have to go into the main office to check in with our visitor management system first. And in some schools, that's quite complicated. Because the main office isn't right next to the main entrance. So we are picking off some of those in projects that were approved in the last CIP for next summer. We need to continue that work. And then, as you all know, because of the COVID epidemic, we have done a lot of work investigating the amount of outside air and the amount of air changes in our HVAC systems and the filtration. So we actually have had a consultant work on that with us. It's a consultant that we really like working with. They've done our newest schools. And they are about to commence the next step in that, which is to look at high, medium, and low costs for the schools that have been most in need of these upgrades. We think staff believes it's very important that we do this work. The pandemic has been a wake-up call on air quality, and I do want to say a lot of you, I'm sure, are familiar with the various studies that have come out of the Harvard School of Public Health to do with air quality, but there are other studies that come out of the Harvard School of Public Health that are very convincing in connecting air quality, particularly CO2 levels, to student cognition. So student health and student cognition are becoming much more aware of the issues around them, and we strongly believe that we need to be having a plan to upgrade all of the facilities over time that need it, and we will have to prioritize the ones that most need it because there obviously won't be enough funds to do everything in this initial CIP. Next slide, please. At the Heights, as you know, the firehouse will move sometimes later this year. And so we have to figure out what to do. There was a school board work session around accessibility and short-term parking needs in August. And there were 4 options that came out of that, which we're in the process of having studied and priced up. And I will say there is some work that has to be done in order to complete the stormwater facility and obviously to clean up, or not necessarily to clean up because the developer has to do that, but to make the land that is there usable by the school after the firehouse goes, even in the short term. So we have to do some work there regardless. Fields, we do collaborate with the county on that, where there are fields that need to be either upgraded to synthetic turf or where the synthetic turf has to be replaced because it's worn out after 8 or 10 years. There may be some of those. It's not looking at this point like there will be any in that in CIP for that, in this CIP. Sure, there will be next year. And then, of course, additional items are to consider additional facility improvements to support the needs of full-time students who are currently enrolled at the Career Center while allowing for future expansion, including costs, obviously, and a timeline for that, and how it fits into that overall plan or vision that was developed during the concept design process. So there are some notes here, and obviously we want to make the best and most efficient use of existing capital funding to support projects prior to requesting additional bond funding. And major infrastructure is not included in this CIP because in the last one, we put funds in for the next 2 years. So we don't need to go to the voters for more funds for major infrastructure until the next CIP. And then, of course, there may be additional needs that are identified between now and the time when the superintendent proposes the CIP. I think that's the last slide. Is it, Robert? Oh, okay. No, here's the timeline. So you can see January 21st is when they took action on this framework. We have a work session on February 9th. On May the 6th, the superintendent proposes the CIP. Work sessions in May, information to the school board in early June, another work session, a public hearing, another work session if necessary, and then at the June 25th meeting, the school board adopts the CIP. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I anticipate we might have some questions. And Ted, is your hand up from before, or do you have a question?
No, that's from before. Sorry.
Okay, that's quite all right. So I'm thinking, given our charge to actually provide input on the CIP, which is why we're seeing what the guidance is now, and the timeline, so that we know how to plan our next meetings. I anticipate that we will have a meeting where we come up with, where we hear the superintendent's CIP and discuss recommendations, basically, and provide feedback. Are there any questions for John on the CIP or the guidance? Certainly it's difficult given the current circumstances and having a truncated horizon, not the usual 10 years, but somewhere from 4 to 6.
Well, a large reason for that is we base the 10-year projections on debt capacity, our capacity for debt, on the county's projections of revenue. And the county obviously has not been able to project that revenue, and so therefore we can't look very far ahead at all because the situation is so uncertain. We also, and Robert can probably add more than this because it's really on this, it's really his issue. We did have, Robert, was it 1,000 students less this year than we did last year, which was really 2,000 less than was projected for this year because of the pandemic. So we really won't know what's happening for sure until next year.
Yeah. Stacy.
Hi. So I was wondering if you could provide some explanation on why APS is pursuing a CIP this year instead of waiting until next year. I know last year we just did a 1-year CIP, but is there a reason behind why we're looking at it this year? Especially because we don't have revenue numbers and we don't have enrollment numbers. It's just sort of a background question that I'm curious about.
So let me see if I can put that in a way, and then actually David Priddy may want to add the school board's perspective. But from the staff perspective, we believe that this work needs to be done. And we believe that the studies that reveal how much work has to be done so that we can come up with a prioritized plan. The superintendent can make recommendations to the school board on how to fund that work. And that could include going out to the community to ask for approval of additional funds at the bond referendum in November, or it could be to redirect other funds, capital reserves, or other funds that have already been approved by the voters.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I see Susan. Oh, go ahead, John.
Yeah, John's correct. So if this is just CIP direction, so the school board has given John and his staff the direction to pursue these things. If these items come up and they're not of urgency and they don't need to be done like this year, then we can just say put a pause on that and then say we don't need a CIP. But that's John has specifically said that his staff wants to do the work to figure out how much these amount to.
Thank you, David. Susan Cunningham has a question.
So John, first of all, thank you for all of your service for our community. It's sad to think that we only get one more month of official service, but I suspect we shall be tapping you informally over time. I have a couple questions, as is my my pattern, so I didn't want you to get off without at least a couple. But first, I guess, is as we're facing such financial constraints and really exercising new muscles as a school system, are there any silver linings that you're seeing, and David, this is probably for you as well, that might alleviate some of the seat urgency for any of the grades? Like, could we do a 4-day-a-week, plus 1 day hybrid, or is there anything like that where we're even post-pandemic, we may have some alleviation of the square footage need? That's the first question. And the second is, with the CARES Act and other recovery funding, I know there's a lot of push for collaboration between schools and counties and and actually nonprofits as well, on getting creative. Are we tapping that, and is there a way Jfac could be supportive in tapping that for facilities and air quality and other restart questions? So that's what I did.
I think I can answer some of those questions. The first one about programs, schedules, and 4 days a week and all of that, I'm really not qualified to, but I can tell you that there is a great deal of discussion about some sort of a virtual learning program, probably for high school students, because some students are doing very well with it and some have circumstances where it makes it better for them. So I think that will be looked at very clearly. Robert could probably, or Jonathan could probably tell us whether that's been discussed specifically in the IPP, but it's in the air, I can say that. And the other thing is, we are working really, really carefully with our Assistant Superintendent for Finance and Management, Leslie Peterson, and our Emergency Manager on all the various acts and funding and CARES Act and what that can be used for and how we get refunded for some of the work we've done and how we can fund some of the additional work. And we're looking very carefully to see what the Biden administration will actually do. There's been a lot of talk about money going to schools. And so, we look at that very carefully, but I don't think there are any conclusions yet.
David, you had a comment? Oh, go ahead, John.
No, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. David, you had a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to answer part of that first one. So we, using rough numbers, we had roughly 1,000 students that did not enroll this year, and we had projected 1,000 more. So we're 2,000 behind the projected enrollment. So a lot of it's predicated on, what we do in the future is predicated on who re-enrolls in the fall and what that looks like when we come back from the pandemic.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on the CIP direction here? again, I think we will be talking about it again and putting some recommendations in a letter if we have any. Okay. Oh, Stacy, I'm seeing your hand again.
I just had one final point, and I mean, it's something that I say often, but I think it's really important that a CIP really addresses, or at least highlights all the needs of APS students, and and of our seat needs and of our capital needs, and I support kind of having a plan to address some of these immediate problems this year, but in general, I feel like a CIP is one that really needs to, really dive in and understand what the needs are, our seat needs are for our enrollment growth, and then compare all of those and with what we can afford. And so, that's just a point that I felt that's important to make. So, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. And I do think in addition to understanding, who does enroll for next year, which students enroll for next year, and also, as the Jfac, thinking about long range planning as well, we should be following some of the long range planning efforts here in the county and weighing in on those as well. So, of course, you've got the Lee Highway study happening, a very long-term planning is happening there. We have the missing middle housing study when we're talking about, potentially increasing some density around the edges of neighborhoods, which I think is probably what they're looking at, maybe doing some pilot projects for missing middle. We as a Jfac, I think, might have a role to play in advising some of these planning processes. Of course, there's the Pentagon phase development site plan that's happening, the PDSP, and also some interesting developments in Crystal City. And so I think we should really keep our ear to the ground on these items because there could be some opportunities that arise as a result of some of these planning processes and site plans that come in. So so more to come on that, I believe. John, I thank you again for coming to us tonight to provide this information, and thank you for the years of planning. You've had a very high profile job. As APS has grown tremendously during your tenure. And I know it hasn't always been easy. And I know some of us haven't always been easy. I've worked with you for a long time. And I know sometimes, we agree and sometimes we don't agree, but thank you, because I know you've really put a lot of time and energy into, creating wonderful spaces for our children to learn. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Kathleen. I appreciate it. I'm honored to have had the opportunity. And I've learned so much. I can't tell you how much I've learned.
Some of which I'm sure you'll be happy to forget after you leave your job. But no, thank you. And again, best of luck to you if we don't see you next month. It's always possible you might come talk to us next month, but if not, please, our well wishes go with you and thank you. All right. Was there any other comment or question? Stacy, did you have something you wanted to say? Or is that from before?
That was from before.
Okay. You can go ahead and take your hand down. Thanks. All right. So now we're going to move to the discussion of Jfac's mission and scope. I was a little remiss at the beginning of this meeting. I just realized that we have 2 new members, and I did not officially welcome you specifically to tonight's meeting, and I apologize for that oversight. So I did want to take a second and introduce to the entire Jfac Janet Copenhaver and well, I'll first start with Janet. Janet, if you want to take yourself off, put yourself on camera and take yourself off mute. I didn't know if you wanted to say a word or two.
Yeah, thanks, Kathleen. And I'm going to stay off video because I've been having some super internet problems and it jacks everything up. But really, I'm happy to be here, happy to join joined the Jfac, and I'm certainly in sponge mode right now and just kind of taking it all in. So looking forward to working with you all. Thanks.
Sorry, thank you. We're very happy to have you. And we are also joined tonight by Wells Harrell. Both Janet and Wells have joined our meetings in the past when they were, I think, assessing whether or not they wanted to join or wanted to put in their application. And so Wells also has been with us before. But Wells, I didn't know if you wanted to put yourself on camera. You don't have to, or if you wanted to say a few words.
Thanks very much, Kathleen. Like Janet, I'm also in sponge mode, looking forward to learning more about our processes and about the outputs, and hopefully doing what I can to help. So thank you.
Well, welcome to you both. And because this is our first meeting of the year, I did think it was useful to just do a quick reminder, and we have a couple of new people with us. I did think it was good to just do a quick reminder of what our mission is, why we're actually here. Doing a reminder every once in a while is probably a good idea in general for all of us. And so I know that in the chat, Robert has put in the Jfac charter. I also, because it's extremely dense, I also put together a little bit of a slideshow here to kind of tease out the big points. So I'm going to share my screen. I think I can. Okay, are you all seeing that?
Yes.
Okay, started at the end, but okay. So very simply, our mission is to provide input to the boards on capital facilities needs, assessments, capital improvement plans like the CIP that we just heard about today, and long-range facility planning for both the Arlington County government and Arlington Public Schools. So those are our three main roles: capital facilities needs assessments, capital improvement plans, and long-range facility planning for the entire county, including schools. So we were formed in coming out of recommendations made by the Community Facility Study Report. That study report was released in 2015. I would note that I and Greg Greeley and Ginger Brown, and let me think who else, well, Matt Ladd, of course, and Robert, who else? Oh, I'm sorry, maybe Robert wasn't actually a staff person at that time. Anybody else on this commission, a member of that community facility study? There were about 25 people, I think, or 23 people who were members. I would also note our former board liaisons from last year, Tanya Talento and Matt DeFerrante, were also on the community facility study report group. The charge was adopted for the Jfac in 2016 by each of the boards, and it was revised in 2017. And don't ask me how it was revised, so I don't remember. But Matt Ladd might be able to tell us, and if anybody's really curious. We are a 21-member advisory body, jointly appointed by for 2-year terms by the county board and the school board, and we meet at least 4 times a year. That's the minimum, and we have to comply with the Virginia open meeting rules and also FOIA. So in terms of needs assessment and CIP, this is a very dense slide, but basically I don't think I have to go through a lot of it because we just heard some of it tonight on how this past year and this year are a little different in terms of the CIP process. But it is usually done by the board every 2 years, by the boards every 2 years. The county's needs assessment is actually reflected in the CIP. There is not another process that the county follows to determine the public facilities needs in the county. The APS needs assessment, they actually do a needs assessment, and it's currently in the form of the Arlington Facilities and Student Accommodation Plan, or what is commonly known as the AFSAP. And on the off years from the CIP adoption, they actually do the AFSAP. And it's a comprehensive look at APS based on a lot of different things, including 10-year enrollment projections. As a result of the recommendations in the community facility study, we have seen over the last 4 years a lot of increased cooperation and data sharing between the county and APS, and that has really, I think, helped the projections a great deal. And every year, Robert has come to us and told us, about some of the new ways that, and the new information that he and the county actually share. And he works very closely, I think, with Elizabeth Hardy, the demographer for Arlington County. Jfac is supposed to review the needs assessment reports prior to the presentation. And actually in our charge, it does say that the county has a separate needs assessment, but it has not developed one as of yet. And the Jfac is also to review CIPs prior to their actual adoption. We provide input, we look for partnership opportunities and comment on them. And those might be, co-location or joint use or adaptive reuse of buildings. Trends and forecasts is also something that's called out in our larger charge. So we're supposed to receive updates on trends and forecasts regularly that would have an impact on facilities. So obviously population and demographic information, school enrollment and student generation factors, any county development activity. These are all updates that we receive from both Robert and Matt and or their counterparts in APS and in the county, just like we have tonight. And then APS and county staff provide those updates to us during our scheduled commission meetings so that we're up to date on what's happening in the county and things that we might need to think about as we make recommendations. And so the last major part of our charge is long-range planning and citing decisions. Both boards went to a lot of trouble to put into our charge that the Jfac is supposed to be a forum where fresh ideas are discussed. They did it in our main charge and they did it again in a later charge. And as we talk to board members, this is sort of the one place where there have been opportunities to do some interesting thinking around, land use or facility use. And so long-range planning for future county and APS facility needs is something we are supposed to be thinking about. Service delivery models, trends, forecasts, and how they impact our use of facilities here in the county. We also can host broad community engagement meetings on facility issues, public forum, and gather public comment on citing decisions and long-term planning. And certainly I mentioned, early on with the Jfac, in the first 3 years of the Jfac, with the assessment of the Buck property and the Carlin Springs site, this is exactly what Jfac did a lot of. There was a lot of public outreach, community engagement, and thinking about the different ways that those sites could be used by the county and by APS, and came up with a lot of recommendations. We have a further opportunity, I think, to collaborate with the boards on updating and implementing the public facility citing process, which also came out of the community facility study. I do think the Jfac may have applied it, and probably one of you who's been on the Jfac a long time can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you might have used public facility or looked at the public facility citing process for maybe part of your assessment for Buck or Carlin Springs. We also received another charge more recently that was added to expand our role, and that was the creation of a public facilities master plan. In 2019, led by then County Board Member Eric Gutschall, there was a charter or charge created for the Jfac to work on this. There were specific components of the plan that were spelled out. We were supposed to advise on a facilities inventory. A lot of the work was to be done by county staff, specifically a gap analysis of facilities and needs that were documented. But it was also to include a summary of existing county public facilities to assess their condition and uses. There was also, it also called out for the ability to, or for the charge to do some scoping, benchmark against other jurisdiction to analyze the level of detail needed to complete a plan, think about key elements, and visioning and forecasting for us to think about how we might bring the public along with us and maybe do some larger long-term planning and allow the public to participate in workshops to inform a long-range vision for public facilities. And then the scope, whoops, sorry about that. Scoping and visioning planning did happen toward the end of 2019. We created 2 groups that started working on that, and that's actually when I joined the Jfac. And then the Pfac work was halted in 2020 due to the pandemic. I know you know there's a larger story there, but I'm not going to go into the details. I think you all were present for it. And so that has been halted sort of indefinitely right now, and it will be reassessed, I think, when things improve. I did want to make sure that I noted that there have been many Jfac accomplishments. It's easy to focus on the fact that we're not doing, or it's tempting to focus on the fact that we're not doing the Pfac, which I know a lot of us were very excited to do. And I feel pretty confident we will do it at some point, within our tenure here. But the Jfac has done other things, and there was ART and APS bus parking recommendations. There was a lot of study, and in fact, the recommendation from the Jfac was actually acted upon when near Green Valley, where there was the CubeSmart site. And you can see the results of it now because it is being used for bus parking. Buck and Carlin Springs, I've mentioned several times, that was just a huge effort by the Jfac. And it resulted in a lot of community engagement and scenarios for using those sites. There's been a lot of reviewing and providing feedback on many plans and updates for both APS and the county over this time. And the public facilities, the public spaces master plan is one that I know this body did weigh in on considerably. We also liaise to other long-term planning processes. The 26 and Old Dominion Drive, Susan Cunningham represented us on that group. There was some work done between the Jfac and the Career Center Working Group, which I chaired, but I did get the benefit of some of the thinking from the Jfac. The Clarendon Sector Plan is something where we now have a liaison, and I believe it's Susan Cunningham also on that one. And then we've looked at a variety of APS boundary and planning initiatives and weighed in on those. And actually, Stacy Snyder is representing us on one of those right now with APS. Not a small accomplishment is the fact that there has been a facilities update to the GLUP. So one of the things that we were looking at with the Pfac, the Public Facilities Master Plan, was the fact that schools and public facilities are not actually represented necessarily or called out in our comprehensive planning documents for the county. That changed last year, however, or maybe a little bit more than last year, at the end of 2019, when there was a facilities update and a map actually of our schools and public facilities that were detailed and added officially to the GLUP. So that's sort of our foot in the door, if you will, to the comprehensive planning process, and having schools and public facilities be part of that. We did actually go through scoping and visioning and came up with recommendations for how to move forward when we start with our actual public facilities master planning. And then we did put together a proposed work plan for doing that planning. I'm sure that work plan will have to be looked at again and changed. It was something that APS and the county, our staff liaisons, Robert and Matt, had started to do. To look at a work plan when it became clear that because of the pandemic, they weren't going to be able to do that. Greg and I had put something together. So we'll have to, obviously regroup on those when we get ready to start the planning process again for the public facilities master planning. And so that's the overview of our charge. Are there any questions or comments? Did I miss anything? Stop sharing. Claire?
Yeah, thanks. I wanted to ask if we could do a little bit of a postmortem for the recent stormwater citing process on the Reed School. We don't have to do this, but I would be curious. It seems like the decision for APS and the county to co-locate some county badly needed infrastructure on a school facility and integrate it with you know, the field construction and all that that's going on. It seems like that would have fit very squarely into our mandate. And I don't believe there was any back and forth at all about it. I'm trying to understand, is that because was that a fluke or was that a feature? And if anyone could speak to that.
I think that's a great question, and it may not actually be the only case of that. I see John, though, has an answer for us. So, John?
Well, I don't know if I can say an answer, and I do want to apologize for suddenly disappearing just now. My computer died. The county really came to the conclusion that this was an opportunity that could not be passed up after our project was under construction, as you know. And we had to move very quickly indeed in order not to jeopardize completion of the school and having the school safe to open. So there was very much a rush, and in fact, some of the work is being done now on that. The connections from the new detention facility upstream and downstream on that huge 84-inch storm sewer that runs across the site. Those are being done now so that we can proceed with our parking lot, we can proceed with our fire lane, and we can proceed with the pathway that will cross the site. And they had to be done now so as not to delay our project. So it was very little time to, you know, sort of discuss this. I think you might have a good point that you should have been informed about it, or, you know, we should have come to you and talk to you about it, what we were doing. But it was an opportunity on which we had to move very fast so as not to jeopardize opening of the school on time. And
thank you, John.
I will say that the collaboration between the county and APS has been outstanding on it. Everybody's moved very quickly to make this happen. It's a great opportunity and we're really working well together on it. There is a memorandum of agreement about it. There's already been a letter agreement between the county manager and the superintendent, which the county board and the school board both approved. And then we are working on a larger memorandum of understanding around the whole design and development of the project and then how it will be maintained afterwards. And that is scheduled to go to the county board and the school board, I think, in March at this point. But it keeps changing because this county is finding ways, has recently found some ways to make the detention that they're putting in there even more useful and effective to the community.
So thank you very much for that answer, John. And thank you, Claire, for raising that, because I had the same thought myself when I heard about it. It seemed like I heard about it after it was a done deal. And it almost seems, you know, given the fact that, you know, the real reason that Jfac was created was to provide a conduit for the county and APS to more closely align and communicate, because that actually in 2015 and before really was happening occasionally, but it was kind of spotty. And so, you know, one of the things we're supposed to do is help that communication. So because, you know, John described this as such a wonderful case of cooperation and collaboration between the county and APS, it almost seems churlish for me to point out that we weren't included, because, you know, in that case, maybe it's not such a bad thing, you know, given the timing. However, I would bring up The Trade Center is another thing, and I know Steve, you're smiling somewhere, I'm sure, because I've heard you say it a couple of times. The Trade Center and that whole redesign process is also something, reimagining that is also something where perhaps the Jfac could have been, well, actually could have been included, but I don't even know if it's a done deal yet. So, that may be something we'd like to get a presentation on. I would note for our county liaison and school liaison. Another thing that has come up, and I know we've included it several times, I do think Steve is probably also the one who raised this issue, is the water treatment plant, which might be coming to, an end of its current life. And, there are many wonderful examples of ways that water treatment plants in more urban areas have been reimagined for joint use. So I think especially with, biophilic or green space or, kind of park components. And so that seems something that we really should be also, have our eyes on and, make some recommendations there. So thank you for that question, Claire. Steve, I think your hand is up. So if you'd like to say something. You might be on mute, Steve, if you're talking.
My apologies, I was. Thanks, Kathleen. Just to extend on Claire's earlier point, and I appreciate John's explanation, and that makes sense to me. And I get it that there could be situations that aren't really conducive to consultation, and it sounds like that was one. To be able to move quickly to take advantage of an opportunity. So a little bit of notice would have been nice, but I get that. But there's the broader work that the county is doing on stormwater right now. And we were beginning to raise questions and points about when we talk about facilities, what is the scope of facilities, and are facilities only buildings, or are certain types of other infrastructure something that we should be considering within our scope? And so I would argue that, especially with the amount of investment that the county is contemplating in stormwater management, including land acquisition, which seems to be off the table for anything else, but it is on the table for overland relief. I really think it's important, and if we have a charter that tells us we're supposed to be visionary and think outside the box, we need to be looking at these other areas like stormwater management and really asking the questions about how they intersect with building style facilities, and how do spaces, I mean, APS does think about the fields, of course, as part of what they're doing for the schools, and there's been the cooperation. But I just, when Claire brought up stormwater, that launched me, and I just want to kind of re-emphasize that. And thank you, Kathleen, because you already hit Trade Center and the water treatment plant. The idea of land recapture is really kind of what I'm driving at, that we have these large footprint operations, and we need to recapture some of that land to use for potentially other purposes. So thanks, that's it.
Thank you, Steve. And it would appear that Susan Cunningham agrees with you, because in the chat she has put a question about, is there a way we can do a comprehensive look at APS sites to support the county's stormwater management goals? And, is that something we should be looking at? So I think that's a good question. I'm taking that down. I think we should think about that as, for part of our, work plan. And there was something else I was going to mention, but it's gone out of my head. So let's go ahead and move on to the Jfac work plan. We're running a little bit behind, but I think we can probably get through this, do this in about 15 minutes and get ourselves back on track. So we wanted to talk about our work plan for 2021. I think, it was a good thing that we had this conversation right now, because it can maybe help inform the way we might want to add to our work plan as well, if we believe we have the capacity. On the agenda that had been actually distributed, I think we had some questions at the bottom. Yes, we did. And I think Robert, are you and Matt going to provide those or present those questions to us?
Yes, I'll project those now. So I'll cover the APS questions. So as Kathleen mentioned, at the bottom of the agenda, there are two questions that we discussed at the last Jfac meeting, with the idea that Jfac members would do the research with minimal staff support on, questions that would be meaningful to both the county and APS. So the two questions that APS is proposing are two that are being proposed with thinking about the public facilities plan in the future, and so that the research on these two questions would be beneficial to that public facilities plan in the future. So the first question is, how do other jurisdictions integrate school facility needs in land use studies, such as sector plans, which oftentimes increase permitted residential densities? And this is one of those questions and ideas that we had been talking about in the scoping committee for the public facilities plan. So in the, research on this would be very valuable for APS, because as Kathleen also mentioned earlier today, thinking about schools and integrating schools in the comprehensive plan. So, any research done on this in Virginia jurisdictions, that could inform eventually the public facilities plan would be very useful, because if the public facilities plan eventually does become an element of the comprehensive plan, then it would codify some of these ideas on how the county, as they're thinking about land use and increasing residential densities, how we can work, hand in hand with APS, so that with those additional residential units and the households and students that will be residing in those units and will need public schooling, how we can work together to work in concert on that. So as an example, and this is one that we talked about the scoping committee, the city of Alexandria and their North Potomac Yard area plan, that's an example of a land use study and a master plan where, as part of the visioning for what that community could look like and the types of uses in that community, one of those elements was a school or academic site. And so it's part of the plan. And in fact, there's a page in which they even delineate where that block for a school or academic facility would be sited. So that's any independent research by Jfac members on, among Virginia jurisdictions, how are schools integrated into those master plans, sector plans, and land use studies. That would be, again, very useful with a look toward the future to the public facilities plan. The other question that we had is, how do other Virginia jurisdictions incorporate schools in public-private partnership agreements? And another example that we talked about at the scoping committee was the city of Falls Church in Virginia, where they actually do have an example of the city government and the school coming together along with the Economic Development Authority to look at 10.3 acres at the George Mason High School campus, reserving that for a private developer as a way of funding, to defray the cost of annual debt service for a new school. So that's an example within a Virginia jurisdiction of a way that public-private partnerships, bringing together city or county resources, economic development resources, and school resources come together for creative ideas on how public-private partnerships can be leveraged to help defray the cost of schools or help fund school needs. So those are two of the ideas for a research, for Jfac members from APS. So Matt, I'll let you cover the other two.
Thanks, Robert. We had a question that was related to the missing middle housing study that I think Kathleen mentioned a little earlier. The missing middle housing studies, it's a multi-year study where we're looking at different housing types that fit kind of in the middle of the range between single family homes on one end and large apartment buildings on the other end. And so currently the county's in phase 1 of that study, and that's developing a common understanding of our housing challenges. There's actually a listening session with the community tonight, and there's 3 more next week if you want to plug into that. But that phase 1 that we're in right now, that's going to wrap up in the fall, and then we'll move into phase 2, and that's going to be analysis of different housing types. So phase 2 is going to look at the implications for stormwater, for tree preservation, and also for county and APS facilities. So we're asking Jfac to look at other places that have pursued missing middle housing policies, and this is not just in Virginia, but nationwide, and then how those planning processes addressed impacts on schools and other facilities.
Terrific, thank you. So we have 3 research questions that have been posed to us. And what I'd like us to do is spend a couple minutes thinking about how we might want to go about researching them. We have, as I see it, 2 choices, but you may come up with others. One would be that if there's a particular question that's interesting to people, have you just kind of sign on to form a group and do research on that one. So we could split up into 3 groups and do research on the question that interests us. The other option is that we just sort of take these one at a time. The missing middle housing policies, I mean, that's a much longer study. I mean, we could probably take a little bit more time or put that one off a little bit if we wanted to, because I think if we came up with some recommendations in the fall, that would be absolutely fine in terms of the timing of that one. 1 and 2 here, Robert, really don't have any timelines either, do they? Except that we're going through some sector plan, or we're going through some planning processes now.
That is correct, Kathleen. And I would think of those 2 questions as, sort of creative ideas and thinking, with an eye toward the eventual public facilities plan.
Mm-hmm. So I'd like to hear what you all think. If there is already a question here that you think you would love to research and you want to spend some time on it, I'd like to hear from you. Or if you think that you'd like for all of us to spend some time on all 3 of them, and we can, figure out the sequence of doing that. I'm opening the floor. Rodney, does that mean you have an idea? I saw your camera go on quickly.
No, that means I just get back home. I was on the phone the whole time. Sorry.
Okay. Last part then, where I've opened the floor to see, how people want to proceed. And if I'm not hearing anything, maybe you guys are open to either one. Stacy?
Just a thought. What if we had like at the next meeting or the next couple of meetings, we had a sort of a brief overview more of the questions, maybe a shallow dive into each one. And then after we take a shallow dive into each one, we could say, wow, there's really something in this one that we feel could give us, that could lead us in a great direction, or maybe it makes sense to look at 2 different ones. But I feel like it's sort of hard to just, take a couple sentences and say, that's the one that we need to devote time into without really knowing more about each one and what each could lead us towards.
Okay. Okay, I'm fine with that. Let's see. Does somebody else have a hand up? That's what I'm looking for. No, okay. So if we do that, what I think I might ask everybody to do is maybe do a little bit of research, spend, say, 30 minutes. Google is our friend here. Spend 30 minutes Googling what other jurisdictions have done, maybe search around and get some ideas and bookmark some links. And we can share those links among us at the next meeting. So maybe come up with maybe one link for each of the questions so you can think about them a little bit, see what might be out there. Robert has already given us 2 examples. I think we'll be able to, certainly look at some jurisdictions that have adopted some missing middle housing policies or done some element of changing their zoning to allow for more dense housing types, or more varied, I should say, housing types. There are some cities that spring immediately to mind. Is everybody good with that? Just taking about 30 minutes sometime between now and 3 weeks from now, and or 4 weeks from now, and doing a little bit of research on each of those questions. All right, anybody not okay with doing that? Okay, everybody seems extremely agreeable. So let's go ahead and do, Ted?
Yeah, I just had a question as I was thinking about the second question about the public-private partnerships. The example is kind of the opposite of what we deal with. But are there any school board policies or any legal issues that would guide our thinking on the kinds of public-private partnerships that would be feasible, let alone that we would want to pursue? I'm just curious whether there might be something that we would either have to be bounded by, or that we would have to look at, maybe would need to change before you could pursue something. So that's just a question that came to mind.
Yeah, so I had the same thought when Robert was giving us the example of the George Mason campus, that we have the opposite issue, right? We're not going to be probably leasing any of our land. I shouldn't say we never, because who knows, but probably that's not likely. Probably what we're going to do is lease some private land, perhaps some private property, to be able to handle increased seat capacity for schools. And so we just actually, was it last month? We actually provided feedback on a policy about real property. It was real property and leases. And so we did provide feedback. You, I think, actually gave me some comments, Ted, that were incorporated into that, about making sure that we have a lot of flexibility in terms of entering lease agreements. I haven't seen that final, I don't think they've adopted that final policy yet. Is that coming up actually at the next board meeting? Robert, do you know?
I'm checking the website as we speak.
I just realized I hadn't checked that. And so it seems that was really one of the only policies that dealt with that. John Chadwick, do you know of any guardrails that we should be aware of?
It wasn't turned on. I'm not aware of any.
Okay, that seemed to be really the only policy that I could find that really addressed that. And it seemed pretty broad.
Kathleen, on that Engage website, the one that I kind of showed how to navigate to, so F7 real property, Planned board action, it says February 2021, doesn't have a specific date, but it should be sometime in February.
Okay. So when that comes out, it might be by the time of our next meeting, actually, since the next meeting is probably the 17th, I think. Yeah, okay. All right, so we'll keep an eye on that. I think it's a good question. Robert, I'm sure you'll take that back and see if there are any other guardrails we should be aware of as we think about this question or these questions. Yeah, but I agree. I completely agree with you. My thought was, you know, it's going to be the opposite. We're going to be looking at leasing private property, you know, to handle our need for seats. And again, you know, the timing is probably good since there are a lot of processes happening right now. And so we should always walk into those processes or pay attention to those processes with you know, these questions in mind. Land use studies, sector plans. Okay. Any other thoughts on this? Stacy, is your hand up from before, or do you have another comment?
No, sorry, it was up from before.
Okay. All right, so Matt does have a comment here saying that we might start with researching Virginia's Ppea law, which I am not familiar with. What does that mean, Matt?
We always call it PPEA, so I had to Google it, but it's the Public-Private Educational Facilities and Infrastructures Act of 2002. But that's that's the authority under which Falls Church did their public-private partnership, and some of the university expansions that have happened recently were under that.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, so we're all going to do a little bit of thinking about these questions and researching on our own, and then we'll come with at least one link or one idea for each one of those questions. And our next meeting, I have on my calendar that it's the 17th. Does that sound right to everybody? Yeah, we moved it to the fourth Wednesday this month, of course, because of the inauguration. All right. Well, if there are no more comments on this, I'd like to go ahead and just move on to the one of our last items, which is the liaison updates, and that will be followed by public comment. And I think we only have maybe two public people here, but liaison updates. So I wanted to provide some time at the end of every meeting, since we do have some people acting as liaisons to other processes. I wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to hear from them. Likewise, we are joined by Nia Bagley, who is the Planning Commission liaison to our commission. Before Nia, I had been the Planning Commission liaison. But Nia, welcome, and thank you very much for joining us tonight. I'll go ahead and kick it off with you. I didn't know if first of all, I just wanted to make sure everybody knew who you were, especially since we're not, in person. And if you just wanted to introduce yourself, and if there's anything long range that you think we need to be thinking about or paying attention to, that would be helpful as well.
Thanks, Kathleen. So first of all, wow, seeing how many faces that I've watched since I was observing community facilities, study group meetings, and had John come and speak to Ballston Virginia Square Civic Association when I was presiding over that. And then being back in the peanut gallery all the time for public comment, when at the very beginning of Jfac, particularly with the Buck meetings, and yes, oh my gosh, I can't even say how many hours. I knew some of you better than I knew my own family there for a while. So, and I was always very supportive of all of your efforts. Some of the ones that have been here the longest, I will miss seeing and hearing from you, because I always felt that your comments, if they didn't totally align with ours, that ours being the neighborhood, were ones that we could learn from. And John, working with you a long time on various things, be sad to not see you at some of these things with all of your sage wisdom, and Greg all the way back. So yeah, I'm very much a big fan of Jfac, and I know that it's been up and down. I've been at some meetings where I thought, okay, we just reached rock bottom. I've been at other meetings where it was like, wow, have we accomplished a lot? So I'm really, and with Kathleen at the helm, I know that things will be, it'll be interesting for a while, but I think you're going to be doing just great. So the Planning Commission asks which commissions and things that Planning Commission members would like to be a liaison to, and you have always been my number 1 choice. And some of the planning commissioners who I guess had not ever gone to Jfac were kind of looking at me like, really? Yes. So I deliberately picked to be here and continue to be here. So there is a lot of stuff on the Planning Commission's plate, as you might guess. And I'm not exactly sure. I think I'd rather hear from some of you, some of the things that as I go to various meetings and chair some things. I've only been on the Planning Commission about 1.5 years and have already chaired a few things. So I'm still learning a lot. There's a lot to know. But if there's things that are of interest to you, since I'll be on most of your meetings, or will try to be, maybe there are certain things that you would like me to keep my eyes open more so for you that, you can let me know.
I do think, well, first of all, thank you for being our liaison and continuing to be our liaison.
You got this call.
Oops, we might want to mute here. All right, so thank you for continuing to be our liaison. I do think, certainly we're always thinking about ways that we could use facilities differently or more broadly. So joint use is always top of mind. I know it is also for a lot of planning commissioners as well.
Very much.
So I think we're very much aligned in that way. But the opportunity to provide seats or schools and meet the needs for public facilities in areas where there is a lot more density being planned, I think is always something we need to have a lot of people talking about that, and making sure that we do not give schools and public facilities short shrift in those planning processes, because sometimes it's, we want the affordable housing, we want density. Density is not a bad thing. It's how we pay for a lot of what we have here in Arlington. If we did not continue to build and have site plan processes happening, we would be a dying community, really. So anyway, I see Claire has her hand up. Let me go ahead and call on you, Claire.
Thanks. And thanks, Nia. It's great to try to integrate worlds, the planning world and our world. And I want to ask about integrating into another world, and just trying to understand. A lot of what I'm hearing right now is that we're on the cusp of some major infrastructure and planning changes that are going to be driven by some clean energy efforts. And I'm trying to understand and see, are Jfac folks thinking about that? Is the Planning Commission hearing that? Am I the only one that's hearing it? Because I'm trying to integrate what I hear as a enormous groundswell, everything from the county's conducting electrification studies. That's going to go into the site plan process. Schools are supposed to put a bunch of solar facilities on the rooftops, but I'm not really hearing that discussion here, and I'm not seeing that in any of the questions that were asked of us. So could you kind of help me understand, is this much further along? Is this on our doorstep, or have you not heard these types of things?
Kathleen, do you want me to take it from the Planning Commission first?
Sure.
And of course, Kathleen can, since she was on the Planning Commission longer than I have been, up until leading up to where we are at now, and what you're hearing, I think, Claire, is the update to the, the county energy policies and the desire for the county to be carbon neutral by certain times, and the emphasis on when site plans come in, what sort of energy efficiency are they going after? Hopefully there's all electric. Is there electric vehicle hookups? What's on the roof? What are they doing that way? So, but I have to say, even before the county tackled a new energy policy, that was something that a lot of planning commissioners were asking already. What I think you're hearing now is a groundswell of all that it's not just our county, but I think you'll find counties across America and hopefully around the world are talking about this as more climate change is and the effects of that are being seen. But yes, the Planning Commission, when you sit in on the meetings or if you observe the meetings, you'll see that a lot of commissioners are very passionate about various things that are personal to them. Like one planning commissioner, for instance, I know always will ask about, electric vehicles and how many hookups, even though they're not out there all the way. What are we going to be doing about that? There's another one that's all into the biophilic. So, and all of us are across the board, interested in making sure that whatever we do or however we end up affecting things, that we leave it better for those that come behind us. So yeah, there is a lot of emphasis. I will say, you try, when you have a developer come in, at least, and Kathleen can chime in on this, a lot of times, the developer comes in with, attempting to get to checking as many of the boxes that the county has out there as possible. So do they get to the perfection of the list? No. Are they being made more aware that this has become much more important and we are asking them or really kind of demanding that the boxes are being checked? I think the latter is probably true. So it's very interesting to watch. So, and really pretty much every site plan that comes in, this very question, everything comes up with that. It's not just about affordable housing or any of that. It's all of it, but the energy thing especially has become, really front and center. So I'm hoping I've answered that question. And then I think, Kathleen, you can probably add to that.
So all of these plans, especially like the energy plan, which is going through revision right now, they are part of the comprehensive plan. And that is, something we have to have by law, actually, here in Virginia. And the Planning Commission they're the keepers of the comprehensive plan. And so, sometimes those elements mesh very nicely. Sometimes they seem to be competing with one another. But it is true that Arlington does have, I guess it was Animal Farm, some plan elements they're all equal, but some are more equal than others. So there are certain elements that are clearly, they just have to be all encompassing because otherwise we won't reach the goals. And so with the community energy plan, it's something that APS has definitely, and I'm sure John could also, weigh in on this. APS has also definitely met, and in fact, probably exceeded a lot of what the county has certainly done. In fact, the most green buildings that are owned by the county are probably our schools, our newer schools. And so I would say it's kind of all and, right? It's not this or that, it's sort of and that. So to answer your question, and I don't know if it really is, we do need to take all of these things into account. We do need to know that these are goals that the county has set. We do have a very hard goal for reducing carbon emissions. And I think we need to get to net zero by 2030. I think that's the newest goal. And so there will be, a variety of ways that is accomplished. To also another angle on your question, and it's something I've been thinking about for a while, is for us to have more joint meetings with some of the other commissions. I think we've had them with the FAC, with the APS Facility Advisory Committee. But I do think it's very useful for us to have it with E2C2. They've just changed their name, but anyway, they're sort of the keepers of the green energy or the community energy plan. I do think it's useful for us to maybe have a joint session with them and talk about adaptive reuse of buildings, which is, of course, it's more green, certainly, than building new or tearing down and building new. As we think about things like the water treatment plant, there are probably a lot of ways that could become more green, that could also become dual use space. And there are probably some very creative things we can think about with them for doing that. Same thing, different topic, but same thing is AED. I think we really need to, I'm sorry, not AED, but the Economic Development Commission. They look sort of long range as well. They had a couple of years ago, they had some very interesting ideas about swaths of land we actually do have that the county owns, but there are other uses on them right now. And they had talked about, with the Planning Commission actually, had talked about some long-term uses. I think that's something we need to probably talk to them about as a commission, looking at long-term planning in a very in a county that's very limited in terms of land. I think we need to know what's out there in terms of additional land that the county may own already and lease out for other purposes, and understand what that time horizon is and what the opportunities are when that time horizon elapses, or that where the leases elapse, because there is one very large property where the leases, I think, are kind of coming up. And that's, I always get it wrong. It's River House, no, River Place. It's the one in Roslyn. River House, I think is right. And so anyway, so I think we should be looking at some joint conversations with the Economic Development Commission as well. And so that's what I'd like to see us doing this year, is reaching out to some of those other groups who have, they have very specific charges, but some of their charge could inform ours and certainly overlap. Did that help a little, Claire?
Thanks. Yeah, I think joint meetings, I'm just trying to, again, integrate what I'm hearing from other, like you said, other commissions, other groups. There's kind of groundswell. And then if you don't hear it in this one, it's like, well, is that on purpose or is it just, disconnect? So thanks.
And I think just, keep asking these questions. Certainly we need to, keep our ear to the ground. We need to know what's out there. And I think we need to initiate some of the contact sometimes. Like I will certainly, be asking about the trade center. I will certainly be asking about the water treatment plant, and seeing what kind of information we can get, and also what we might be able to provide to help, with the direction of that development or redevelopment. So that was the first liaison update. I wanted to move on to Susan. I don't know if you've actually had a Clarendon sector plan meeting since you volunteered to be our liaison, but if you had anything you wanted us to know about that process.
Yeah, I actually haven't, or if there has been one, I haven't known about it. So and I also want to, since that hasn't happened yet, I had extended the offer to Kathleen, since she was sort of conflicted by being a really close neighbor and had been holding the bag for us. But I would be delighted to share if there's anyone new member or old that would like to take that on. I'm conscious that I got the fun of the last one, the 26th in Old Dominion. So I will dig in if need be, but absolutely would love to share the opportunity as well if anyone's interested, or even, buddy team on it if anyone's reluctant and needs a little boost.
And I think it's a great idea to team up with people to some of these liaison opportunities. So thank you, Susan. I think there's actually only been one meeting, and it was, I don't know, last October or November or something. And I did attend it, and I have notes on it, so I will pass those on to you, Susan. It was very preliminary, though. It was very preliminary.
Great. I was like, December, January is all a little bit of a blur this year.
So thank you. And if anybody's interested in joining Susan on that, I'm sure she'd love to have company. And then we also have Stacy Snyder, our vice chair. She is the liaison to APS. And actually, is that process still happening, Stacy? And what's the status of it?
The status is that, we had several meetings in the fall where we discussed criteria for the sites, and the goal is to create a one-stop shop for all the information on all the APS and county sites that could potentially take on future development. Like some of the sites that, like Fleet Elementary, like we're not considering, that's not on the list because there's no way to expand that. But for all the sites, there's a listing and I talked to Michael Frickel, who's in charge of it last week, and he says that they're also kind of trying to add in the IPP and also historical knowledge of any past studies that have been done, on instructional programming and the way that it has worked in Arlington in APS is that all this information is scattered everywhere. Some of it's at facilities and operations, some of it's planning evaluations. And so he's really trying to consolidate all the information so it's a very useful tool. And Susan Cunningham asked in the chat box above whether or not there was any stormwater management goals, if any of our sites include that. And I will put that question to Michael, and I'll get back to you next month. Michael said that the study or the package or the one-stop shop will be ready by they're estimating around mid-March.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks so much, Stacy, and thank you and Susan for representing us on those processes.
You're welcome.
I did want to take this opportunity to move on to public comment. We're a little bit late, but we only have one person who's a member of the public here, and it's Cynthia Hilton, who joins us very regularly. So Cynthia, it's nice to see you again. Happy New Year. I didn't know if you had any public comment for us.
Thank you very much, but given the hour, it's been a great meeting. I will defer. Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you. And I'm sure it was not lost on you that the next item that we're looking at, or the next policy, is the aquatics policy. And I'm sure you probably already weighed in on that, right?
That's one of the main reasons that I was listening here. And I appreciate your guidance to people to read it and to provide comment.
Great. All right. Thank you. Well, with that, I think that's it for our agenda, and we're just a minute after, so it wasn't terrible. We were running a little bit long, but again, thank you to John Chadwick for joining us and for all your years of service. Thank you also to June Locker for she helps run the meeting behind the scenes. Thank you to Matt and Robert, and I hope you saw in the chat that Susan or Sue Robinson had specifically called you out and said, how great it had been to work with you. So I wanted to make sure you had seen that before she dropped off the call. And thank you also to David Pretty for joining us, our school board liaison. We look forward to, you're welcome to come to any meeting, you're welcome to just drop in at any point. Also, if you have something specific you would like to talk to us about, we're happy to put you on the agenda. I know you have lots and lots of other meetings though, so we will not be hurt if you can't come. We certainly understand school board members and county board members are extremely busy. In fact, Christian had sent his regards. He also had a different meeting tonight as well. And so we will be seeing him at a future meeting soon. And Wells and Janet, again, welcome. And I was a little bit remiss in first introducing you and also mentioning that congratulations to Stacy, who is our vice chair. She was named by the boards at the end of December, beginning of January. Have a wonderful month. I will follow up with an email on our homework assignment and these 3 questions in your email. So, and if you have any questions, please make sure to reach out. Keeping in mind that we cannot have conversations via email with the full commission. But if you have a specific question, please do reach out, and you can certainly send it to me and copy Matt and Robert as well. All right, everybody have a great month. Stay well, and I look forward to seeing you next month. Bye-bye.